Welcome, horror lovers. We bet that many of you know someone who has worked as a babysitter. That can be a pretty easy way to earn some extra money, unless you're unlucky enough to babysit the wrong kid. Priscilla always wanted to be a babysitter, and once she turned 18 years old, she started to babysit kids in the neighborhood. She soon realized that it was a pretty easy job and worked hard to maintain a good reputation to attract more customers. One day, Miss Lourdes, an eccentric old woman who used a walking stick and limped exaggeratedly, wanted to hire her. Priscilla accepted without hesitation and without making questions, since the old lady had offered her $150 to take care of a child. The next morning, Priscilla was in front of the cracked door of Miss Lourdes' big and dark house. She came out to explain to Priscilla that Talita, the child to babysit, was a shy girl who would be easy to deal with. Priscilla found that a bit strange. She never heard about Miss Lourdes having grandchildren and had never seen any kids playing around her house. Priscilla tried calling Talita to meet her, but Lourdes indicated that the girl was in the basement. Priscilla went down the stairs feeling a bit of dread, each step feeling more strange and sinister than the last. In a corner of the room, there was a childlike figure facing to the wall and wearing an antiquated dress. The girl turned around, and Priscilla's heart skipped a beat when she saw a grotesque mask covering the girl's face. Talita took 2 steps backwards in fear. Priscilla told her to not be scared, that she was there for them to play and become good friends. Priscilla then headed towards the wall, which was covered in old newspaper clippings. Coming closer, she could see they talked about tragic news. A horrible traffic accident destroys a family. A couple and her daughter died instantly. Only the grandmother could survive. The clippings included grotesque photos of a burning car made into a mash of bent metal. Priscilla immediately looked at the girl again, who was now closer to her, but still looked at Priscilla with caution. Priscilla immediately thought about running out of there, but when she turned around, Lourdes was there, blocking her path. Priscilla tried to make an excuse, saying she didn't feel well, but the old lady already knew what was going on. "I will let you leave, don't worry, but before you do, let me explain something to you." Lourdes told her that when she lost her family in the accident, she was completely devastated. Thus, she traveled far and wide until she found a sorceress, known for being capable of performing miracles. The sorceress told Lourdes that she could bring back to life one of the deceased, but only one. The old lady had to make the most difficult decision of her life and chose her granddaughter. Priscilla didn't believe Lourdes and thought she was trying to prank and scare her. Then Lourdes sweetly told Talita to come. The girl obeyed, still walking cautiously. The old woman then asked her to remove her mask, and Priscilla felt the most horror she had felt in her entire life, once she saw that Talita's face was decomposing. The girl felt ashamed and immediately hid her face. Then out of the blue, the old woman hit Priscilla on her legs with her stick, making her fall to her knees. "You made Talita feel bad. Why don't you make peace by playing makeup? I bet she can give you some good advice." The girl took a barber's razor out of her pocket and approached Priscilla with an evil smile.
Horror lovers, today we bring you the story of Luis, a young and easily scared boy who turned his nightmares into reality. He's been having trouble sleeping after watching a horror movie his parents forbid him from watching. He wanted to prove he had courage, but ended up having one of the worst times of his life when watching that ghost movie. He never admitted to having been scared by that grotesque movie. Everything did not admit to them that they were right. But even then, his mother knew Luis pretty well, and the next day she gave him a look which could be translated as, "I told you so." That morning, Luis had huge bags under his eyes and looked exhausted. All week, he suffered in silence the horror of seeing menacing shadows on every corner of his room. The faces of the ghosts from the movie appeared whenever he closed his eyes. And when he finally managed to fall asleep, the result was always the same. He would dream about infernal monsters that chased him through graveyards, labyrinths, and deserted streets, to then wake up sweating and scared. However, what he cared the most about was keeping up the appearance of being brave and not attracting any attention to himself, since he feared the backlash and mockery from his older brother Antonio. Luis saw that terrifying movie on a Monday, and that weekend would be Halloween. A TV channel had scheduled for that week a horror movie every night. He had only seen the first one, and that had been enough for him. However, he kept seeing the ads for the movies that would be on every day, and he only imagined the grotesque scenes they would contain. The weekend got closer and closer, and Luis was completely terrified of what could happen to him on October 31st. That night, he only cared about getting into bed, focusing and falling asleep quickly, and so he did. However, this time his nightmares felt more real than usual. So much so that he wasn't sure if they were real or not. That night, Luis met a smiling ghost with orange eyes who called himself Juan Smiles. He shook his hand and it felt dead cold. Very politely, the ghost said, "I will visit your house since I need to take a life. So get used to living in hell, okay? Once you hear my steps, it doesn't matter what you do, I'm going to get you." Luis woke up screaming, also waking up his brother Antonio, who was already fed up of the noises and scares of that week. Antonio threatened Luis, grabbing him from the neck while yelling, "Listen up, Luis, I have to get up early tomorrow. If you make another move, if you wake up, if you even look at me, I will tear your head out and hang it from the window. Is that clear?" Luis nodded, and as a warning, his brother slapped him in the face and then went back to bed. Terrified, Luis closed his eyes and tried to sleep again. He knew he couldn't make any other move. However, suddenly he heard a crack, like step or a click. He then heard another step and another and another. Those sounds were advancing through the hallway until reaching his room. They finally stopped, and Luis was trembling, reciting all the prayers he knew. Luis then heard an even stronger crack and wanted to believe that it was all his imagination, that Juan Smiles wouldn't actually be there. He closed his eyes tightly, but the sound was still there. Every time the click was different and more constant, but he still didn't move. At the end, Luis stopped hearing that sound and finally fell asleep. That nightmarish night finally ended. The sunlight announced to Luis that he was still alive and that he had nothing to fear now. Not even his brother. And so he turned around to say good morning to Antonio and apologize for the noises he made the night before. And what he witnessed was the most horrifying and grotesque scene of them all. His brother's head hanged from a hook on the window. It had been teared out from his body. And from it, drops of blood were continuously falling, making a click every time they fell on the puddle of blood below. Antonio's dead face showed a macabre smile too. It seems that Juan Smiles actually paid them a visit after all. Hey there, horror lovers! Today we have a new and terrifying story for you to enjoy. Are you afraid of mannequins? If you are, then get ready to feel true panic. It all happened in a clothing store. Hannibal, the janitor in charge of cleaning the store, arrived at 10 p.m. after all the other employees went home. As soon as he got in, he went to look for his work tools. First, he would sweep and vacuum, and then he would clean the restrooms and the dressing rooms. It was a very elegant and expensive clothing store, so the entire place needed to look spotless. He followed the same routine every day, and although his bosses were pretty demanding, he didn't complain. Working there was a dilemma for Hannibal. He was making money, and it was a relatively easy job, but at night, the store was a haunting place where unexplainable and terrifying things took place. On more than one occasion, he thought about leaving that job, but since he had no other skills, getting a similar job with the same salary would be pretty much impossible. The day he got the closest to quitting was on Wednesday. The night was darker than usual, and the wind and the rain made it impossible to hear any sound. As always, he stopped to take off some clothes left on the tables to clean them, but one particular dress really caught his attention. When seeing it from far away, he had the impression that the dress was moving, but how could a dress move on its own? He got closer to it, but wasn't able to understand what he was seeing. The dress was moving its sleeves and was inflated as if some sort of body was wearing it. That day, he decided to go home before his shift ended and called in to say he felt sick. He tried to convince himself that the fatigue was affecting him and that he just had a hallucination. The next nights were pretty quiet and everything seemed to be in order, but even then he didn't let his guard down as he suspected that something was going to happen. And he was right. A few weeks later, something terrifying happened again. Hannibal was about to finish cleaning when he saw a note on top of a pile of shoe boxes, which said, "Store these boxes in the warehouse, thanks." The warehouse was the darkest place of the store and Hannibal dreaded it. That's where they kept the mannequins, and every time Hannibal got in there, he felt as if they followed him with their sight. He hated those huge dolls, and in more than one occasion, he had had nightmares about them. But he still needed to finish his job, so he went to the warehouse. He left the boxes in front of the door, opened it, and turned on the lights as quickly as he could. He picked them up again and got in. The mannequins were turned towards the door, once again giving the impression of them looking at him. Lines of sweat ran over Hannibal's face and his shirt was completely drenched under his armpits. And just when he got to the shelves, the lights turned off, and he heard how the door behind him was violently shut. A suffocating darkness surrounded him as his heart was beating at superhuman speed. When he reacted, he took out a lighter from his pocket and advanced, guided by its weak flame. He searched for the door and found it, but in front of it were the mannequins, which seemed to have walked in front of it to block it. Hannibal once again felt he was going insane. How could a bunch of lifeless mannequins walk? But they did. They also looked at their hands and turned their heads slowly, fixing their horrible eyes on Hannibal. The next day, when the store opened, the employees found Hannibal dead in the warehouse. He looked horribly pale and his facial expression showed sheer terror. His eyes were widened out and his mouth was still open. No one ever knew what exactly happened in there.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!